Oh, hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to The Story of Doctor Dolittle by Hugh Lofting. The 7th chapter, The Bridge of Apes. Queen Ermintrude had never in her life seen her husband so terrible as he got that night. He gnashed his teeth with rage. He called everybody a fool. You are a fool, and you are a fool. He threw his toothbrush at the palace cat. He rushed round in his nightshirt and woke up all his army and sent them into the jungle to catch the doctor. Then he made all his servants go too. His cooks and his gardeners and his barber and Prince Bumpo's tutor. Even the queen, who was tired from dancing in a pair of tight shoes, was packed off to help the soldiers in their search. All this time the doctor and his animals were running through the forest towards the land of the monkeys as fast as they could go. Gub-Gub, with his short legs, soon got tired, and the doctor had to carry him, which made it pretty hard when they had the trunk and the handbag with them as well. The king of the Jolliginki thought it would be easy for his army to find them, because the doctor was in a strange land and would not know his way. But he was wrong, because the monkey, Chi-Chi, knew all the paths through the jungle, better even than the king's men did. And he led the doctor and his pets to the very thickest part of the forest, a place where no man had ever been before, and hid them all in a big, hollow tree between high rocks. "We had better wait here," said Chi-Chi, "till the soldiers have gone back to bed. Then we can go on into the land of the monkeys." So there they stayed the whole night through. They often heard the king's men searching and talking in the jungle round about, but they were quite safe, for no one knew of that hiding place but Chi-Chi, not even the other monkeys. At last, when daylight began to come through the thick leaves overhead, they heard Queen Ermintrude saying in a very tired voice that it was no use looking any more, that they might as well go back and get some sleep. As soon as the soldiers had all gone home, Chi-Chi brought the doctor and his animals out of the hiding place, and they set off for the land of the monkeys. It was a long, long way, and they often got very tired, especially Gub-Gub. But when he cried, "Wait!" they gave him milk out of the coconuts, which he was very fond of. They always had plenty to eat and drink, because Chi-Chi and Polynesia knew all the different kinds of fruits and vegetables that grow in the jungle and where to find them, like dates and figs and ground nuts and ginger and yams. They used to make their lemonade out of the juice of wild oranges, sweetened with honey, which they got from the bees' nests in hollow trees. No matter what it was they asked for, Chi-Chi and Polynesia always seemed to be able to get it for them, or something like it. They even got the doctor some tobacco one day, when he had finished what he had brought with him and wanted to smoke. At night they slept in tents made of palm leaves on thick, soft beds of dried grass, and after a while they got used to walking such a lot and did not get so tired, and enjoyed the life of travel very much. But they were always glad when the night came and they stopped for their resting time, Then the doctor used to make a little fire of sticks, and after they had had their supper, they would sit round it in a ring, listening to Polynesia singing songs about the sea, or to Chi-Chi telling stories of the jungle. And many of the tales that Chi-Chi told were very interesting, because although the monkeys had no history books of their own before Dr. Dolittle came to write them for them, they remembered everything that happens by telling stories to their children. And Chi-Chi spoke of many things his grandmother had told him, tales of long, long, long ago before Noah and the flood. Of the days when men dressed in bearskins and lived in holes in the rock and ate their mutton raw, because they did not know what cooking was, having never seen a fire. And he told them of the great mammoths and lizards as long as a train that wandered over the mountains in those times, nibbling from the treetops, and often they got so interested listening that when he had finished, they found their fire had gone right out, and they had to scurry round to get more sticks and build a new one. Now, when the king's army had gone back and told the king that they couldn't find the doctor, the king sent them out again and told them they must stay in the jungle till they caught him. So all this time, while the doctor and his animals were going along towards the land of the monkeys, thinking themselves quite safe, they were still being followed by the king's men. If Chi-Chi had known this, he would most likely have hidden them again. But he didn't know it. One day, Chi-Chi climbed up a high rock and looked out over the treetops. And when he came down, he said they were now quite close to the land of the monkeys and would soon be there. And at that same evening, sure enough, they saw Chi-Chi's cousin and a lot of other monkeys who had not yet got sick, sitting in the trees by the edge of a swamp, looking and waiting for them. And when they saw the famous doctor really come, these monkeys made a tremendous noise, cheering and waving leaves, swinging out of the branches to greet him. They wanted to carry his bag and his trunk and everything he had, and one of the bigger ones even carried Gub-Gub, who had got tired again. Then two of them rushed on in front to tell the sick monkeys that the great doctor had come at last. But the king's men, who were still following, had heard the noise of the monkeys cheering, and they at last knew where the doctor was, and hastened on to catch him. The big monkey carrying Gub-Gub was coming along behind The big monkey carrying Gub-Gub was coming along behind slowly, and he saw that the captain of the army sneaking through the trees. So he hurried after the doctor and told him to run. Then they all ran harder than they had ever run in their lives, and the king's men coming after them began to run too, and the captain ran hardest of all. Monkeys in jungle, doctor in distance. Then the doctor tripped over his medicine bag and fell down in the mud, and the captain thought he would surely catch him this time. But the captain had very long ears, though his hair was very short, and as he sprang forward to take hold of the doctor, one of his ears caught fast in a tree, and the rest of the army had to stop and help him. By this time the doctor had picked himself up, and on they went again, running and running. And Chi-Chi shouted, "It's all right, we haven't far to go now." But before they could get into the land of the monkeys, they came to a steep cliff with a river flowing below. This was the end of the kingdom of Joliginki, and the land of the monkeys was on the other side, across the river. And Jib the dog looked down over the edge of the steep cliff and said, "Golly, How are we ever going to get across? Oh dear, said Gub Gub. The king's men are quite close now. Look at them. I am afraid we are going to be taken back to prison again. Whee! And he began to weep. But the big monkey who was carrying the pig dropped him on the ground and cried out to the other monkeys, Boys, a bridge! Quick, make a bridge! We've only a minute to do it. They've got the captain loose and he's coming on like a deer. Get lively! A bridge! A bridge! The doctor began to wonder what they were going to make a bridge out of, and he gazed around to see if they had any boards hidden any place. But when he looked back at the cliff, there, hanging across the river, was a bridge all ready for him. Made of living monkeys. For while his back was turned, the monkeys, quick as a flash, had made themselves into a bridge just by holding hands and feet. And the big one shouted to the doctor, Walk over, all of you, hurry! Gub Gub was a bit scared, walking on such a narrow bridge at that dizzy height above the river. But he got over all right, and so did all of them. John Dolittle was the last to cross, and just as he was getting to the other side, the king's men came rushing up to the edge of the cliff. Then they shook their fists and yelled with rage, for they saw they were too late. And the doctor and all his animals were safe in the land of the monkeys, and the bridge was pulled across to the other side. Then Chi-Chi turned to the doctor and said, Many great explorers and grey-bearded naturalists have lain long weeks hidden in the jungle waiting to see the monkeys do that trick, but we never let a white man get a glimpse of it before. You are the first to see the famous Bridge of Apes. And the doctor felt very pleased. The 8th chapter, The Leader of the Lions. John Dolittle now became dreadfully, awfully busy. He found hundreds and thousands of monkeys, sick, gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, dog-faced baboons, marmosets, grey monkeys, red ones, all kinds, and many had died. The first thing he did was to separate the sick ones from the well ones. Then he got Chi-Chi and his cousin to build him a little house of grass. The next thing, he made all the monkeys who were still well come and be vaccinated. And for 3 days and 3 nights, the monkeys kept coming from the jungles and the valleys and the hills to the little house of grass, where the doctor sat all day and all night, vaccinating and vaccinating. Then he had another house made, a big one, with a lot of beds in it, and he put all the sick ones in this house. But so many were sick. There were not enough well ones to do the nursing, so he sent messages to the other animals, like the lions and the leopards and the antelopes, to come and help with the nursing. But the leader of the lions was a very proud creature, and when he came to the doctor's big house, full of beds, he seemed angry and scornful. "Do you dare to ask me, sir?" he said, glaring at the doctor. "Do you dare to ask me, the king of beasts, to wait on a lot of dirty monkeys? Why, I wouldn't even eat them between meals." Rawr. Although the lion looked very terrible, the doctor tried hard not to seem afraid of him. "I didn't ask you to eat them," he said quietly. "And besides, they are not dirty. They've all had a bath this morning. Your coat looks as though it needs brushing badly. Now listen, and I'll tell you something. The day may come when the lions get sick, and if you don't help the other animals now, the lions may find themselves left all alone when they are in trouble. That often happens to proud people. Doctor and Lion talking. Me? The king of beasts? To wait on a dirty lot of monkeys? The lions are never in trouble. They only make trouble, said the leader, turning up his nose, and he stalked away into the jungle, feeling he had been rather smart and clever. Then the leopards got proud too and said they wouldn't help. And of course the antelopes, although they were too shy and timid to be rude to the doctor like the lion, they pawed the ground and smiled foolishly and said they had never been nurses before. And now the poor doctor was worried, frantic, wondering where he could get help enough to take care of all these thousands of monkeys in bed. But the leader of the lions, when he got back to his den, saw his wife, the queen lioness, come running out to meet him with her hair untidy. One of the cubs won't eat, she said. I don't know what to do with him. He hasn't taken a thing since last night. And she began to cry and shake with nervousness, for she was a good mother, even though she was a lioness. So the leader went into his den and looked at his children, two very cunning little cubs lying on the floor, and one of them seemed quite poorly. Then the lion told his wife quite proudly just what he had said to the doctor, and she got so angry she nearly drove him out of the den. You never did have a grain of sense, she screamed. All the animals from here to the Indian Ocean are talking about this wonderful man and how he can cure any kind of sickness and how kind he is, the only man in the whole world who can talk the language of the animals. And now, when we have a sick baby on our hands, you must go and offend him. You great booby! Nobody but a fool is ever rude to a good doctor. You! And she started pulling her husband's hair. Go back to that white man at once, she yelled, and tell him you're sorry, and take all the other empty-headed lions with you and those stupid leopards and antelopes. Then do everything the doctor tells you. Work like niggers, and perhaps he will be kind enough to come and see the cub later. Now be off! Hurry, I tell you, you're not fit to be a father. And she went into the den next door, where another mother lion lived, and told her all about it. So the leader of the lions went back to the doctor and said, I happened to be passing this way, and I thought I'd look in. Got any help yet? No, said the doctor. I haven't, and I'm dreadfully worried. Help's pretty hard to get these days, said the lion. Animals don't seem to want to work anymore. You can't blame them in their way. Well, seeing you're in difficulties, I don't mind doing what I can just to oblige you, so long as I don't have to wash the creatures. And I've told all the other hunting animals to come and do their share. The leopards should be here any minute now. Oh, and by the way, we've got a sick cub at home. I don't think there's much the matter with him myself, but the wife is anxious. If you are around that way this evening, you might take a look at him, will you? Then the doctor was very happy, for all the lions and the leopards and the antelopes and the giraffes and zebras, all the animals of the forests and the mountains and the plains came to help him in his work. There were so many of them that he had to send some away, and only kept the cleverest. And now very soon the monkeys began to get better. At the end of a week the big house full of beds were half empty, and at the end of the second week the last monkey had got well. Then the doctor's work was done, and he was so tired he went to bed and slept for 3 days without even turning over. The 9th chapter, The Monkey's Council. Chi-Chi stood outside the doctor's door, keeping everybody away till he woke up. Then John Dolittle told the monkeys that he must now go back to Puddleby. They were very surprised at this, for they had thought that he was going to stay with them forever. And that night all the monkeys got together in the jungle to talk it over. And the chief chimpanzee rose up and said, "What is the good man? Why is it the good man is going away? Is he not happy here with us?" But none of them could answer him. Then the grand gorilla got up and said, "I think we all should go to him and ask him to stay. Perhaps if we make him a new house and a bigger bed and promise him plenty of monkey servants to work for him and to make life pleasant for him, perhaps then he will not wish to go." Then Chi-Chi got up and all the others whispered, "Shh, look, Chi-Chi, the great traveler is about to speak." And Chi-Chi said to the other monkeys, "My friends, I am afraid it is useless to ask the doctor to stay. He owes money in Puddleby, and he says he must go back and pay it." And the monkeys asked him, "What is money?" Then Chi-Chi told them that in the land of the white men you could get nothing without money. You could do nothing without money. That it was almost impossible to live without money. And some of them asked, "But can you not even eat and drink without paying?" But Chi-Chi shook his head. And then he told them that even he, when he was with the organ grinder, had been made to ask the children for money. And the chief chimpanzee turned to the oldest orangutan and said, "Cousin, surely these men be strange creatures. Who would wish to live in such a land? My gracious, how paltry!" Then Chi-Chi said, "When we were coming to you, we had no boat to cross the sea in and no money to buy food to eat on our journey. So a man lent us some biscuits, and we said we would pay him when we came back. And we borrowed a boat from a sailor, but it was broken on the rocks when we reached the shores of Africa. Now the doctor says he must go back and get the sailor another boat because the man was poor and his ship was all he had." And the monkeys were all silent for a while, sitting quite still upon the ground and thinking hard. At last the biggest baboon got up and said, "I do not think we ought to let this good man leave our land till we have given him a fine present to take with him, so that he may know we are grateful for all that he has done for us." And a little tiny red monkey who was sitting up in a tree shouted, "I think that too." And then they all cried out, making a great noise, "Yes, yes, let us give him the finest present a white man ever had." Now they began to wonder and ask one another what would be the best thing to give him. And one said, 50 bags of coconuts, and another, 100 bunches of bananas. At least he shall not have to buy his fruit in the land where you pay to eat. But Chi-Chi told them that all these things would be too heavy to carry so far and would go bad before half was eaten. "If you want to please him," he said, "give him an animal, and you may be sure he will be kind to it. Give him some rare animal they have not got in the menageries." And the monkeys asked him, "What are menageries?" Then Chi-Chi explained to them that menageries were places in the land of the white men, where animals were put in cages for people to come and look at. And the monkeys were very shocked and said to one another, These men are like thoughtless young ones, stupid and easily amused. Ish, it is a prison he means." So then they asked Chi-Chi what rare animal it could be that they could give the doctor, one the white man had not seen before. And the major of the marmosets asked, "Have they an iguana over there?" But Chi-Chi said, "Yes, there is one in the London Zoo." And another asked, Have they an okapi? But Chi-Chi said, yes, in Belgium, where my organ grinder took me 5 years ago. They had an okapi in a big city they call Antwerp. And another asked, have they a push me pull you? Then Chi-Chi said, no white man has ever seen a push me pull you. Let us give him that. The 10th chapter. The rarest animal of all. Push me pull yous are now extinct. That means there aren't any more. But long ago, when Dr. Dolittle was alive, there were some of them still left in the deepest jungles of Africa. And even then they were very, very scarce. They had no tail, but a head at each end, and sharp horns on each head. They were very shy and terribly hard to catch. The black men got most of the animals by sneaking up behind them while they are not looking. But you could not do this with the push-me-pull-you, because no matter which way you came towards him, he was always facing you. And besides, only one half of him slept at a time. The other head was always awake and watching. This was why they were never caught and never seen in zoos. Though many of the greatest huntsmen and the cleverest menagerie keepers spent years of their lives searching through the jungles and all the weathers for push-me-pull-yous, not a single one had ever been caught. Even then, years ago, he was the only animal in the world with 2 heads. Well, the monkeys set out hunting for this animal through the forest, and after they had gone a good many miles, one of them found peculiar footprints near the edge of a river, and they knew that a push-me-pull-you must be very near that spot. Then they went along the bank of the river a little way, and they saw a place where the grass was high and thick, and they guessed that he was in there. So they all joined hands and made a great circle round the high grass. The push-me-pull-you heard them coming, and he tried hard to break through the ring of monkeys, but he couldn't do it. When he saw that it was no use trying to escape, he sat down and waited to see what they wanted. They asked him if he could go with Dr. Dolittle and be put on show in the land of the white men. But he shook both his heads hard and said, "Certainly not." They explained to him that he would not be shut up in a menagerie, but would just be looked at. They told him that the doctor was a very kind man, but hadn't any money, and people would pay to see a 2-headed animal, and the doctor would get rich and could pay for the boat he had borrowed to come to Africa in. But he answered, "No! You know how shy I am. Hate being stared at." And he almost began to cry. Then for 3 days they tried to persuade him, and at the end of the 3rd day he said he would come with them and see what kind of man the doctor was first. So the monkeys travelled back with the push-me-pull-you, and when they came to where the doctor's little house of grass was, they knocked on the door. The duck, who was packing the trunk, said, "Come in." And Chi-Chi very proudly took the animal inside and showed him to the doctor. "What in the world is it?" asked John Dolittle, gazing at the strange creature. "Lord save us!" cried the duck. "How does it make up its mind?" "It doesn't look to me as though it had any," said Jip the dog. "This doctor," said Chi-Chi, "is the push-me-pull-you, the rarest animal of the African jungles. The only 2-headed beast in the world. Take him home with you and your fortune's made. People will pay any money to see him." "But I don't want any money," said the doctor. "Yes, you do," said Dab the duck. "Don't you remember how we had to pinch and scrape to pay the butcher's bill in Puddleby? And how are you going to get the sailor the new boat you spoke of unless we have the money to buy it?" "I was going to make him one," said the doctor.
Quack, quack.
"Oh, do be sensible," cried Dab. "Where would you get all the wood and the nails to make one with? And besides, what are we going to live on? We shall be poorer than ever when we get back. Chi-Chi's perfectly right. Take the funny-looking thing along, do." "Well, perhaps there is something in what you say," murmured the doctor. "It certainly would make a nice new kind of pet. But does the, what do you call it, really want to go abroad?"
Yes, I'll go,
said the Push-Me-Pull-You, who saw at once from the doctor's face that he was a man to be trusted. "You have been so kind to the animals here, and the monkeys tell me that I am the only one who will do it. But you must promise me that if I do not like it in the land of the white men, you will send me back." "Why, certainly, of course," said the doctor. Excuse me, surely you are related to the deer family, are you not?"
Yes,
said the Push-Me-Pull-You. "To the Abyssinian gazelles and the Asiatic camois on my mother's side. My father's great-grandfather was the last of the unicorns." "Most interesting," murmured the doctor, and he took a book out of the trunk which Dab was packing, and began turning the pages. "Let us see if Buffon says anything."
Quack, quack.
"I notice," said the duck, "that you only talk with one of your mouths. Can't the other head talk as well?" "Oh, yes," said the Push-Me-Pull-You, "but I keep the other mouth for eating mostly, and that way I can talk while I am eating without being rude. Our people have always been very polite." When the packing was finished and everything was ready to start, the monkeys gave a grand party for the doctor, and all the animals of the jungle came, and they had pineapples and mangoes and honey and all sorts of good things to eat and drink. After they had all finished eating, the doctor got up and said, "My friends, I am not clever at speaking long words after dinner, like some men, and I have just eaten many fruits and much honey. But I wish to tell you that I am very sad at leaving your beautiful country, because I have things to do in the land of the white men. I must go. After I have gone, remember never to let the flies settle on your food before you eat it, and do not sleep on the ground when the rains are coming. I hope you will all live happily ever after." When the doctor stopped speaking and sat down, all the monkeys clapped their hands a long time and said to one another, "Let it be remembered always among our people that he sat and ate with us here, under the trees, for surely he is the greatest of men." And the grand gorilla, who had the strength of 7 horses in his hairy arms, rolled a great rock up to the head of the table and said, "This stone for all time shall mark the spot." Even to this day, in the heart of the jungle, that stone still is there, and the monkey mothers, passing through the forest with their families, still point down at it from the branches and whisper to their children, "Shh, there it is. Look where the good white man sat and ate food with us in the year of the great sickness." Then, when the party was over, the doctor and his pets started out to go back to the seashore, and all the monkeys went with him as far as the edge of their country, carrying his trunk and bags to see him off. The 11th chapter, The Black Prince. By the edge of the river they stopped and said farewell. This took a long time, because all those thousands of monkeys wanted to shake John Dolittle by the hand. Afterwards, when the doctor and his pets were going on alone, Polynesia said,
Quack.
"We must tread softly and talk low as we go through the land of the Joliginki. The land of the Joliginki. If the king should hear us,
Quack.
he will send his soldiers to catch us again, for I'm sure he is still very angry over the trick I played on him."
Quack.
"What I am wondering," said the doctor, "is where we are going to get another boat to go home in. Oh well, perhaps we'll find one lying about on the beach that nobody is using. Never lift your foot till you come to the stile." One day, while they were passing through a very thick part of the forest, Chi-Chi went ahead of them to look for coconuts. And while he was away, the doctor and the rest of the animals, who did not know the jungle paths so well, got lost in the deep woods. They wandered around and around, but could not find their way down to the seashore. Chi-Chi, when he could not see them anywhere, was terribly upset. He climbed high trees and looked out from the top branches to try and see the doctor's high hat. He waved and shouted. He called to all the animals by name, but it was no use. They seemed to have disappeared altogether. Indeed, they had lost their way very badly. They had strayed a long way off the path, and the jungle was so thick with bushes and creepers and vines that sometimes they could hardly move at all, and the doctor had to take out his pocket knife and cut his way along. They stumbled into wet, boggy places. They got all tangled up in thick, convolvulus runners. They scratched themselves on thorns, and twice they nearly lost the medicine bag in the underbrush. There seemed no end to their troubles, and nowhere could they come upon a path. At last, after blundering about like this for many days, getting their clothes torn and their faces covered with mud, they walked right into the king's black garden by mistake. The king's men came running up at once and caught them. But Polynesia flew into a tree in the garden without anybody seeing her and hid herself. The doctor and the rest were taken before the king.
Ha ha!
Cried the king.
So you are caught again. This time you shall not escape. Take them all back to prison and put double locks on the door. This white man shall scrub my kitchen floor for the rest of his life.
So the doctor and his pets were led back to the prison and locked up. And the doctor was told that in the morning he must begin scrubbing the kitchen floor. They were all very unhappy. "This is a great nuisance," said the doctor. "I really must get back to Puddleby. That poor sailor will think I've stolen his ship if I don't get home soon. I wonder if those hinges are loose." But the door was very strong and firmly locked. There seemed no chance of getting out. Then Gub-Gub began to cry.
Hurry! Hurry!
All this time Polynesia was still sitting in the tree in the palace garden. She was saying nothing and blinking her eyes. This was always a very bad sign with Polynesia. Whenever she said nothing and blinked her eyes, it meant that somebody had been making trouble, and she was thinking out some way to put things right. People who made trouble for Polynesia or her friends were nearly always sorry for it afterwards. Presently she spied Chi-Chi swinging through the trees, still looking for the doctor. When Chi-Chi saw her, he came into her tree and asked her what had become of him.
"The doctor and all the animals have been caught by the king's men and locked up,"
"Quack," whispered Polynesia. "We lost our way in the jungle and blundered into the palace garden by mistake."
"Quack."
But couldn't you guide them?" asked Chi-Chi, and began to scold the parrot for letting them get lost while he was away looking for the coconuts.
"What?"
"It was all that stupid pig's fault," said Polynesia. "He would keep running off the path hunting for ginger roots, and I was kept so busy catching him and bringing him back that I turned to the left instead of to the right. When we reached the swamp... Shh! Look! There's Prince Bumpo coming into the garden. He must not see us. Don't move, whatever you do."
"Quack."
And there, sure enough, was Prince Bumpo, the king's son, opening the garden gate. He carried a book of fairy tales under his arm. He came strolling down the gravel walk, humming a sad song, till he reached a stone seat right under the tree where the parrot and the monkey were hiding. Then he lay down on the seat and began reading the fairy stories to himself. Chi-Chi and Polynesia watched him, keeping very quiet and still. After a while, the king's son laid the book down and sighed a weary sigh. "If I were only a white prince," said he, with a dreamy, faraway look in his eyes. Then the parrot, talking in a small, high voice, like a little girl, said aloud, "Bumpo, someone might turn thee into a white prince, perchance?" The king's son started up off the seat and looked all around. "What is this I hear?" he cried. "Methought the sweet music of a fairy's silver voice rang from yonder bower. Strange!" "Worthy prince," said Polynesia, keeping very still so Bumpo couldn't hear her, "thou sayest winged words of truth, for 'tis I, Tripsitinka, the queen of the fairies, that speak to thee. I am hiding in a rosebud." "Oh, tell me, fairy queen," cried Bumpo, clasping his hands in joy. "Who is it can turn me white?" "In thy father's prison," said the parrot, "there lies a famous wizard, John Dolittle by name. Many things he knows of medicine and magic, and mighty deeds he has performed. Yet thy kingly father leaves him languishing long and lingering hours. Go to him, brave Bumpo, secretly when the sun is set, and behold, thou shalt be made the whitest prince that ever won fair lady. I have said enough. I must now go back to fairyland. Farewell!" "Farewell!" cried the prince. "1,000 thanks, good Tripsitinka." And he sat down on the seat again with a smile upon his face, waiting for the sun to set.